Okay, just show that. All right, I guess we'll get started. Thanks everybody for coming out. I don't know how many of you were all here for the last event, but last event we had a speaker come in and talk to us about theistic evolution and kind of offer a theological and philosophical defense of theistic evolution. So tonight, kind of with that backdrop, we have a new speaker named Tim Barnett, who's going to be speaking about evolution and kind of looking at a more scientific approach, which is going to be interesting. And yeah, we're going to take questions at the end and everything, but it should be a good presentation. So I'm glad that you guys are all here. I'm just going to do a quick bio of Tim, and then we'll get rolling. So Tim's specialty has always been in the field of science. At York University, he majored in physics and minored in math. From there, he went to the University of Ontario Institute of Technology, where he continued his scientific research and received a bachelor's degree in education. Since then, Tim has been working as a teacher, and he is currently teaching grade 10 and 11 biology in Newmarket, Ontario. Tim is also the founder of his Christian apologetics ministry known as Clear Thinking Christianity. And through his ministry, Tim hopes to help Christians think more clearly about what they believe and why they believe it. Tim also is married to his beautiful wife, Stacy, and together they have a 15-month-old little girl named Juliana and another child on the way. So let's present our speaker and get this thing going.
Perfect, thanks. So I want to start off by telling you something that may surprise you. I'm not omnipotent, okay? Don't tell my wife that. So I just want to start by saying that because I know this is a very controversial subject, and I'm going to give you a view that you may not share. I'm going to offer up a case that I find reasonable, okay? And if you don't, I just hope that you have an open mind today, or tonight I should say. I'm not going to try and convince you of what I believe. What I'd like to do tonight is kind of put a stone in your shoe. I want you walking out of this room kind of annoyed, but in a good way. I want you thinking about some of these things we're talking about. We're going to be looking at theistic evolution. I'm going to offer up a logical case, a scientific case, and a theological case, actually against theistic evolution. Okay? So where do we start? Well, I want to start with a quote from Richard Dawkins. Okay? If you're not familiar with Richard Dawkins, he's one of the leading atheists in the world today. Okay? He's written The God Delusion. That was arguing for atheism and against theism. But he's also recently written a book in 2009 called The Greatest Show on Earth. Now, 2009 was a big year for evolution because it was the 200th anniversary of Charles Darwin's birth. And it was also the 150th anniversary of the publication of his book on the origin of species in 1859. And so in Dawkins' book, The Greatest Show on Earth, in the opening pages, he says this: evolution is a fact, beyond reasonable doubt, beyond serious doubt, beyond sane, informed, intelligent doubt. Beyond doubt, evolution is a fact. The evidence for evolution is at least as strong as the evidence for the Holocaust. Okay, these are really powerful words. Jerry Coyne, a fellow atheist, professor of biology at the University of Chicago, opens his book, also written in 2009, called Why Evolution is True, with these words. He says, evolution is a fact. And far from casting doubt on Darwinism, the evidence gathered by scientists over the past century and a half support it completely. Okay? Very powerful words. Now Dawkins goes, very Dawkins-esque, he goes a step further. He actually said, and this is actually going back to 1989, he says this in a book review. He says, it's absolutely safe to say, if you meet someone who claims not to believe in evolution, that person is ignorant, stupid, or insane, or wicked, but I'd rather not consider that. So here, now, I joke, so let's take a poll. Who doesn't believe in evolution? You know, after seeing these words, who would want to admit that they don't believe in evolution? You know, you're like a Holocaust denier, according to Dawkins, okay? And so what do you do with words like this? Well, there are some theists, some Christians, who are feeling the weight of these claims and the pressure to conform to the scientific majority. The majority does believe in evolution. And so sadly, they're doing whatever they can to kind of capitulate to this view. In fact, there's been a whole host of books that have been written, and I've just put up 3. And the argument is from these books is to show there's no incompatibility between evolution and Christianity. So you have Ken Miller, a textbook author. He's a Roman Catholic. He argues for the compatibility of evolution and Christianity in his book, Finding Darwin's God. Carl Giberson, he's a physicist. He argues for the same conclusion, the same thesis in Saving Darwin. And then the language of God, which is actually an argument for theism, but Francis Collins, who is a very famous Christian. In fact, he was the head of the Human Genome Project. Okay? He's a doctor and geneticist. He's written the language of God and makes the same argument. And so you have these groups arguing for theistic evolution. Now, sometimes it goes under the name evolutionary creation. Sometimes it's called fully gifted creation. Sometimes it's called biologos. I'm going to kind of put these all together as theistic evolution. Okay? And I realize that these individuals differ in their views in some respects, but I want to just broadly speak of theistic evolution. In addition to these books, there's actually been organizations founded for the sole purpose of convincing Christians that we should embrace evolution. The BioLogos Foundation is one such organization. They have a website, biologos.com, if you want to check that out. Now, Al Mohler, the president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, puts his finger on what's driving the theistic evolutionists at BioLogos. He says, the BioLogos approach to the issue is now clear. They want to discredit evangelical objections to evolution and to convince the evangelical public that an acceptance of evolution is a means of furthering the gospel. They have leveled their guns against the intelligent design movement, at young earth creationism, and against virtually all resistance to the embrace of evolution. They claim that the embrace of evolution is necessary if evangelicalism is not to be intellectually marginalized in the larger culture. They have warned that a refusal to embrace evolution will doom evangelicalism to the status of an intellectual cult. Okay? So you need to embrace this or you're going to end up being pushed to the wayside. Now, today we're going to look at this question, are evolution and Christianity compatible? And if so, should Christians embrace evolution? You don't have to be in the evangelical world very long to realize that this is one of the biggest questions on the forefront of our culture. Books have come out. These were bestsellers or books of the year in 2011, God and Evolution, and Should Christians Embrace Evolution? I'd strongly recommend both of those books. Also, within the past year and a half, Christianity Today has featured 2 actually cover stories. One was on the historical atom. The other one, this was actually this summer, was The Tale of Two Scientists. It actually featured a young earth creationist and a theistic evolutionist. Okay? So this is this topic we're talking about is kind of at the forefront of evangelicalism. And listen, how you answer the question, should Christians embrace evolution, will either label you as a heretic or as a fundamentalist. And that's not what I'm going to do today, okay? I just want to throw the arguments out there and we can have a discussion afterwards. So before I begin my talk, before I can answer this question, or try to, we need to answer the question, what is evolution? Or what do we mean by evolution, okay? Richard Dawkins says it's a fact. So what is he talking about? Well, we got to define evolution. So evolution is an equivocal word. That is, it has more than one meaning, okay? And it can be very slippery when you get into conversations with people because they might have a definition in mind that you don't have in your mind. So let's just look at some of them. First, the uncontroversial definitions. Change over time. You know, my Corvette, or the Corvette evolved. I don't have a Corvette. I wish I did. But it's changed over time. We could say it evolved. That has nothing to do with biology. So things change. Even the book of Genesis, even if you're a young earth creationist, talks about change. Change in gene frequency in a population, again, that's not controversial. Everyone believes that. Limited common descent, again, the Bible teaches that if you're a young earth creationist, you believe that the animals were created after their kind, then sure, all dogs came from 2 dogs. All humans came from a pair of humans. Okay, so that's limited common descent. And the mechanism of natural selection, random mutation. We see those happen all the time, which I'll illustrate. Those aren't controversial, okay? Everyone believes those. So in that sense, evolution is a fact, okay? Now here's what is more controversial, okay? Universal common descent, that is that all of the organisms on the face of the planet came from a single universal common ancestor. And then this one, and this is the definition that you're going to see most in textbooks and what Richard Dawkins argues for. Richard Dawkins calls it the blind watchmaker thesis. This is neo-Darwinian evolution, okay? And it basically says that all organisms are descended from a common ancestor, but it's solely through unguided, unintelligent, purposeless material processes such as natural selection and random mutation, okay? This part is crucial to the definition, as I'll show you. Now, these go under the label microevolution, and these would go under a label macroevolution, okay? I realize I'm going to fly through some slides here, so if you can't take good notes, we're shooting a video here, so I'm hoping that'll be on and you can watch that again. So I apologize for kind of flying through this. Now, that definition, the blind watchmaker thesis, that is what I believe is incompatible with Christianity. But it's the definition that the scientists use, okay? In fact, the experts, 39 Nobel laureates, wrote to the Kansas State Board of Education in 2005. And they actually defined evolution this way. They said, evolution is understood to be the result of unguided, unplanned process of random variation, random mutations, and natural selection. Ken Miller, remember I talked about Kenneth Miller. He wrote Finding Darwin's God. In his textbook, in fact, in the States, 40% of the textbooks that are used in high schools are Ken Miller's textbook, the Miller-Levine textbook. And he says in his textbook, evolution works without either plan or purpose. Evolution is random and undirected. And there's other quotes I'd have to fill these slides, so we'll just leave it there. Now, here's my logical argument against theistic evolution. It would look like this. To ask the question, can God use Darwinian evolution or neo-Darwinian evolution, is the same as asking, can God guide an unguided process? I would argue that that's a contradiction in terms. To ask, can God direct an undirected process, or can God plan an unplanned process, is a contradiction. It violates the law of non-contradiction. And so it's logically incoherent, okay? And so here's the dilemma. We have, it's either guided or it's unguided, the law of excluded middle. But if evolution is guided, then neo-Darwinian evolution is false. As I just described it, as the scientists describe evolution, it would be false, okay? Because then you'd have to say, well, no, it's not guided. We'd have to say, no, the definition is it's guided, it's planned, it's intelligent. If evolution is unguided, then God had no part in guiding it, okay? So I see this as violating the law of non-contradiction. The idea of theistic evolution violates this law. The law states that you can't have A and not A at the same time and in the same sense. There's a Muslim philosopher named Avicenna, in the 11th century. He said, if anyone denies the law of non-contradiction, should be beaten and burned until he admits that to be beaten is not the same as not to be beaten, and to be burned is not the same as not to be burned. Okay? I spoke with a pastor. He was going to invite me to speak at his church, not on this subject. And we sat down at Tim Hortons, and it turns out he didn't want to invite me to his church. He wanted to debate me. And he said, there's no such thing as truth. This is a pastor at a very large church, actually, in Newmarket. And he said, you can't actually tell people that Christianity is true. They don't believe in truth. There is no truth. And then we started getting into logic, and he's like, you're using Western logic.